Hello, this is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I simply give conservative perspectives about the world around me. And I want to give some plugins before I start the topic. Again, I'm on Spotify. I'm on Anchor. And I'm also on iHeartRadio. I'm on Amazon Music. I'm on Audible. And I'm growing my platform, so keep a lookout for different platforms where podcasts are involved. And I'm also growing my social media status. So currently I am on Minds, so you can simply find me on the Harboring Light on Minds, and then I'm also on Twitter. And you can just simply find me at the Harboring Light on Twitter. And please feel free, any commentary you have, I'm more than willing and happy to engage with you, because I like that engagement and would look forward to that. So keep that in mind. So today, on this topic that I'm talking about particularly is the continuation of the America. This is the part 2. Now, I have my husband engaging in this conversation, and so I want you to hear and have a balanced perspective versus my own. So, to recap, and the first part, I was simply talking about why even the idea of being American, why is that such a disdain thing? And so I want to talk about now the aspects of travel, and when you go abroad, what you experience with the how is that like being American, and the American experience with that, and what that all engages. And I would like for my husband to chime in about that. So, what do you think about that? What is your perspective? As I mentioned in my previous podcast, I was talking about your experience with being in the military, and I want everybody to have the perspective about what you think and understand that from your point of view.
Well, from what I've noticed, just like we have a lot of misconceptions about the rest of the world, the rest of the world has a lot of misconceptions about Americans and America as a whole. The time I spent in Ireland, most of the people thought that every single person in America owned a gun. We could only hope, but maybe someday. They thought Americans were vastly undereducated. They thought Americans were vastly overweight. A lot of them were surprised to see, Americans that weren't either supermodel or action movie star buff or, fat bastard fat.
I'm sorry. I just want to chime in on that. I think it's really funny because, typically, from the American point of view, we see Europeans more in general as, waif, thin type, supermodel-esque. And that's kind of the mentality that sweeps around in America. And that's really interesting that to have that kind of point of view. But that's just really unfortunate in general. Because, you see that a lot of people from abroad, they think these ideas. And then both of us, even to expand on that, we're Texans, so a lot of people think, because you're from Texas, you must know how to ride a horse, or you must own a ranch or, things of that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I had a friend in high school that moved here from Alaska and was expecting to see tumbleweeds, was surprised when she found out that most of the people she went to school with, parents, didn't have guns or horses. She was actually surprised to know that her family in Alaska had horses and guns more readily available to them than most of the people that she was going to school with. And again, that's growing up in the Fort Worth Metroplex and, kind of living in and out of the city throughout that entire time. But, it's the people get a lot of their information and knowledge from what they see on TV and what they read about in books and things like that, and those are hardly ever accurate descriptions of the majority of people. But one of the biggest things is a lot of people, with the thought of Americans being, dumb and uneducated, mainly stems from the fact of us not using, the metric system, taking temperature in Fahrenheit versus Celsius, different monetary system, different means of measuring distance, things like that. So when they start giving directions, and I'm sorry, I don't know how far you mean by that because I'm not familiar with kilometers, people, it kind of threw a lot of people off because that's what they're used to. But, again, being from Texas, we're so close to the border, and, we're used to dealing with people where there's a massive language barrier. We're used to dealing with people who may not understand exactly what you're saying or how you're saying it. So we go about handling these things a lot differently. And I think for most of where I got to experience in Europe, they're not used to that, because outside of a language barrier that is very minuscule because most people speak English, there wasn't much difference between the way they went about daily life. Whether you're in Italy or Spain, whether you're in Great Britain or Germany, people will speak a different language. They may do things a little bit differently, but the general means of everything is about the same. Tax is included in the price because there's one tax. If you're trying to give somebody directions, it's all the same. They instantly know and understand what you're talking about as long as you can understand the language. Most of the money used is going to be on the euro, and there's no conversion of, you don't have enough, or you have too much, or you don't have any of that. But on the offhand, I've experienced people from other countries coming to America not understanding that tax isn't included, but also not understanding tipping a waiter and tipping a waitress. And I know that's a touchy topic for a lot of people of saying it's racist or saying something about it, but in all honesty, it would be the same as working for a commission. If the better you are, the better tip you deserve, the better salesman you are, the more likely you are to sell and get your commission. Now, people do screw people out on tips. I have no doubt about that. But that's the hard draw of it. But that's a whole nother topic. I mean, when it comes to travel, as long as you understand that everyone is different, and your beliefs on the culture can be vastly skewed because of the differences in most people, and most of what we understand about other cultures comes from movies and TV as well. If you do travel, if you get that opportunity, do it with an open mind. and don't have any assumptions when you do, when you
Absolutely.
go.
Absolutely. Okay, so to add on to that, as far as values, particularly American values, it seems like, for instance, let's say the most generalized example that comes to mind right now to me that everybody can wrap their head around is saying to yourself, oh, you want to wait till marriage to have sexual relations, or you want to even the idea of marriage seems to be not it seems to be a polarizing thing now in America. I mean, that happens obviously outside of America, but it seems like that's more of a prominent thing in American culture, especially in perpetuating these images in music and movies. Now, what do you specifically think about that? As far as that seems like it's just a jaded topic or something to avoid to be married, or it's just some kind of imprisonment thing that to see marriage is a sacred thing.
Well, I think for as much as marriage is a culture, the flip side to that coin is divorce culture. Marriage is a sacred institution between two people. Full disclosure, I'm someone who's been divorced, but I got married for the wrong reasons in the first place. I'm glad I found you, and you're the love of my life, and we've got our beautiful children, and I couldn't imagine myself with anyone else. When we met, I was ready. You changed my outlook because I was under the idea that I would never be married again, that it was a waste of time, and you completely changed that.
Yeah. Okay.
But when it comes to other countries, honestly, I don't even know statistics for other countries. And I mean, in French class in high school, I remember the teacher talking about how in France it was illegal to get a divorce, but I don't know how far that goes or any accuracy in that. It's something that never really comes up outside of personal dichotomies and stuff like that of, oh, hey, how many people get divorced in London? How many people are getting divorced in Spain? How many people are getting divorced in Germany? How many people are getting divorced in Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, all these other countries? Most people don't care, but then again, I don't know if any of these other countries have as much government tie-in as we do here. Like I said, I believe marriage is between people, not people and government. If government would back off and stop meddling, things would be a lot easier. A lot of the issues we currently have with marriage would be a lot easier. I mean, you can say religion says marriage is between a man and a woman all day, but in actuality, it was government saying marriage was between a man and a woman. If you leave it up to people, if you have people who don't want to say, we're going to have a wedding ceremony for you because we don't believe in it, you can find people that'll say, yeah, you know what, we'll say, we'll do a marriage ceremony for you. We don't care. Same thing with interracial marriages like ours. Same thing with, anything else. That if for every person you find that's against it, you can find someone who's for it, and if that's the case, that's fine. But when government gets involved, government regulation says that only men and women can be married. Government regulation says that white and black people can't be married. Government regulation says, and then it takes an act of government to overcome the regulations that government set. The rules that government said are the rules. Now you need an act of government, which is slow moving and things like that, to get rid of it. I think if you said, what's your tax filing status in terms of government and taxation is theft, but that's a topic for a whole nother podcast. But have government as little involved as possible. A lot of people say, well, who takes care of the kids? Who gets to decide who takes care of the kids? Men and women, men and men, women and women, whoever should be adult enough when it comes to their children to do what's best for their children. I mean, you shouldn't hold your children hostage in a divorce and hold them ransom for whoever. Things are getting better, but I think currently men have the short end of the stick when it comes to marriage, and men have the even shorter end of the stick when it comes to divorce and alimony and things like that. I mean, you look at how mad people are currently getting when a wealthy woman gets divorced and now has to pay a man alimony, and you hear all these arguments that men have been making for centuries of, she didn't work, she didn't do any of the work for this money, so why should I have to pay her? Why should she get this? But it's always been sit down, shut up, and deal with it. But now that women are the shoes on the other foot with women, it's no, now this needs to change. And it's like that with a lot of things. Industries that are primarily men are typically very roughshod when it is primarily men, and then once more women become involved, they change over time. And I think that's how it is with marriage. Once things got to a point in divorce where it's blatant and easy to see, and people start complaining, and you run into the issues with gay marriage of, well, if two gay men get married and get a divorce, who pays who alimony, or who gets primary custody? The good thing that comes from that is people start asking these questions more often, and then people start looking, well, why is it that a woman always gets custody? Why is it that the woman gets alimony unless she gets remarried, which incentivizes women to not get remarried, but to just have live-in boyfriends? Because if they get remarried, they lose all of a sudden a bunch of income that they get for free.
And to add on to that, as far as American values, it used to be where at the forefront that was seen. I mean, but I'm sticking to America as far as, this is a global sense, but it was even more prominent in America because of the vast difference through culture. A woman staying at home, being a housewife, that was seen as something to aspire to. Now, from my personal point of view of that, I'm very fortunate that now I have the opportunity to be a stay-at-home mom. I can be connected with my children. I was always connected with my children when I was working, but that's even more of a prevalent thing when you stay at home, because the dynamic between the wife and the dynamic between mom and child and everything when she stays at home is you can tell the presence of that, and you can work hard if you're willing to work hard, when you're a working mom, which I did and which I will continue to do, throughout the stages of life, is putting your family first and merging those things together throughout different circumstances, and making sure that your children and your husband or your wife or whoever, however the situation is, that they understand that you're loved and cared for. That's that used to be a very valued thing, but I want to know why you think why is that just seen as something that's just very off-putting now, and it's even pushed and it's even mocked and ridiculed. It's encouraged to be mocked and ridiculed now in mainstream media.
Yeah. Do you mind grabbing coffee, please? So, I believe that there's an active fight against family. I think that you have people who have vested interest in making sure people are separate from each other, and it starts by making sure people are separate from their families. Now, if you have a mother staying at home showing children that family sticks together, family looks out for family, things like that, and a father's going away and coming home and showing what a strong man does, working and coming home and still making time for his family, and shouldering his part and his duty through thick and thin, and then the woman shouldering her part and her duty through thick and thin, working together for a common goal, not to be rich, not to be wealthy, not to have status and class, but to raise a family and send to the next generation something better. I think that scares, people who would rather have full control over everybody. It's easier to control individuals than it is groups. So, you get into these situations where people don't want to see a strong family structure. Now, if you had to work, if we were in the position again to where you had to work and someone had to take care of the family, take care of our children, I still wouldn't want to see our children go to strangers, go to daycare.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I feel. Yeah, we both feel very gun hold. Well, yeah. Pun intended, whatever you want to say. We're very strong hold on that because. Okay, keep.
No, I would. Like we did when we had our first daughter. Get my parents to babysit, and my parents were more than happy to, babysit for us while we had to work and to help us with our children. And they were happy to do it because their parents, my grandparents, had a strong role in my sister and my raising. When both of my parents were in the position to where they both had to work, it was always counted on my grandma Juanita or my grandma Tommy or an aunt or an uncle or some relative that was close with strong family structure, that to help, and we all helped each other out constantly. I have a lot of older brothers and sisters, half brothers and sisters, and there was never the idea of half brother and sister. That didn't come around until other kids started telling me, well, that's not really your whole brother, that's not really your whole sister. That concept didn't exist. We were family, we were brothers and sisters. When they needed somewhere to go, they had our house. We would make arrangements. We would move, make things. When my brothers and sisters started having children and they needed someone to watch their children so that they could work, my parents were always there for them. I was always there for them. I always do everything I can for my family, and my family has always been there for us. Family doesn't always have to get along, but when you're strong together, it's harder for some stranger to come in and say, this isn't going to work. Y'all can't do this. You can't be this way. You have to do what we tell you. You have to raise your kids the way we say. You have to tell them and teach them the things that we say. You know, we as people need people. We, as much as we like to believe we're not, we're animals. Not only are we animals, we're pack animals. You know, the pack can't be too big, but it also can't be too small. No person is meant to be alone without anyone. You know, people will try to push people away because, yes, just like anyone, we need our space and we need to know where we belong in ourselves, in our spirit, and in our family structure. But once we discover that, you know, I think families work great. And, you know, that's why there is a saying, it takes a village. You know, it does take a village to raise a child. It takes people of different walks and different outlooks to show those to a child, and that child can grow up with a full personality. I think one of the big issues we have today is we are a society of people with half-formed personalities. They get very little from their parents that were supposed to be the biggest influences on them, and a lot from TV and music and third-party sources that are bought and paid for, and it's all show. It's not real opinion. It's not real dedication. You know, it's dedication to money, dedication to fame, dedication to, you know, getting bags, so to speak. But it's not a dedication that lasts. You know, family will always be there for you. Most of these people will be forgotten in 100 years. You know, most of these people, you know, won't exist. There won't be anybody to remember them. There won't be anybody to, you know, think of them. But when you have a strong family, I mean, you can live forever, because the stories of your great-grandfather who fought in World War II, your great-great-grandfather who fought in World War I, you know, I have stories of family who fought in the Civil War because they immigrated here and were told, you got two choices, you know, you can go to this factory and get to work helping out with the trains, or you can join the Union Army and help fight in the Civil War. If they came to the States through, you know, Ellis Island and things like that, if they came through the States, you know, depending on what means they came in, you know, whether it was through a harbor or through Louisiana, you know, different people came in different means, and, you know, what you had to do to survive. But those stories get passed down to generations, and I know those stories, and I'll tell my children about them. You know, my children will never be able to meet their Uncle David who fought in Vietnam, but they will know about him. You know, they will never meet their grandfather, their great-grandfather, because I didn't have the opportunity to meet my grandfather, but they will know how he fought in World War II, and just like I was told the stories of him, they'll be told the stories of him. You know, my grandchildren will never get to meet my father, most likely. But I have no doubt that they will hear the stories of my father. This little man who is 5'7", that thought he was a giant standing greater than 8 foot, would never back down from anyone, no matter what, as long as he knew he was in the right. you know, and those are things that I hope for. But those are also the ties that join families together and show that it doesn't take a fictional character, it doesn't take a Bible story, it doesn't take a superhero to be moral. It doesn't take these great stories of people and things you could never be to hold high ground. You can be related to someone who fought for what's right. You can be related for someone who sacrificed everything because they believed in what they were doing. You know, whether the reason we are somewhere is just or unjust, if you truly believe that what you're doing is moral and for the right reason, you know, you can hold your head up high with honor. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, Nazis, you know, there were Nazis who truly believed that what they were doing was correct and moral, and I would counter with there were some bad people who did very bad things, but there are also people who truly believed and cared for their country and their families and wanted to make sure that their families survived, so they did what they had to do to ensure that. And those same people fought and did everything they could to make sure that goodness and light overcame any darkness, and they wouldn't have been able to do that without a strong family telling them this is what is right. You know, for every story you hear of an SS soldier who is just doing whatever, there are stories of German military personnel helping hide you know, Jews and Romani and Polish and so many other people, and doing what was right, but also at the same time trying to save and protect our country while trying to save and protect our family. That's why family is important.
And now, all these experiences that you're telling me that you talked about, your dad, your experience with not seeing yourself as a half brother, all of these things, the importance of family unity, and even the whole idea of going through Ellis Island in order to come to make something of yourself and having all these choices. That's the beauty, I think, of America, of being an American. Now, why I'm saying this is, okay, let's say that, and my husband can continue out his perspective because he's actually traveled, and I'm just saying from a research point of view, and then you know, what I've had friends, co-workers seen on TV, and my husband shared with me certain countries. Let's say your father was a mason, or your father was an electrician, or your father was an architect. That's your legacy. That's it. You can't change or go against anything, or you can't change or go against anything because of your class, or you can't change or go against anything because of who you know. And the beauty about being in America, if you have that strong work ethic and that positivity, and you keep trying to build yourself, and you have the opportunity, and you can change your situation. You're not just dealt to be just one dimensional. You have the free range to build who you want to be, have the visions that you want. And I think a lot of people forget that now. They don't, they forget it, or they don't appreciate. It's a whole thing. A lot of people don't appreciate that, or they just don't. They don't understand how valuable that is. And what do you think about that?
I would agree. I mean, the spirit of exploration has really waned. Today you're told you have to have a degree, you have to have an education. If you want to make anything of yourself, you have to have a college degree. You will be lucky to get a job where you make more than $30,000 a year if you don't get a degree. I can tell you right now that's not true. I can attest and affirm. I was told so often growing up that if you don't go to college, not by my parents never told me any of this. It was always teachers pushing education. They're part of a Ponzi scheme almost. It's like, oh well, if you don't get an education, then you won't make as much money as the person next to you who does have that education. And from the looks of it, you get a lot of people with educations who aren't making squat. I mean, they're not making any money at all. To hear them talk, you have these highly educated people crying and complaining, wanting uneducated people to pay off their education bills. I mean, I'll say it again. I think it's a Ponzi scheme. I think it's, I was screwed by getting this, so I'm going to screw somebody else into getting it because woe is me. But to get back to it, the spirit of exploration. I mean, people moved out west to make a better life for themselves. They could have stayed where they were and went into something and tried to do, and just carried on with what was there. Coming to America and was an adventure, and it was to try to get something better. Nobody had any belief that it was going to be easy. Nobody had any belief that that's what they had to do if they wanted to succeed. They knew that there was an opportunity for success, but there was also an opportunity for great failure. Because if there isn't as big, Newton's law, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Murphy's law, for the greater the risk, the greater the reward. The greater opportunity for reward, the greater opportunity for failure. You can't just say, well, this is what everybody says I have to do to be successful, without looking to see how successful those people are. If a giant group of people who barely make $40,000 a year are telling you that you have to do what we did if you want to be successful, well, it's like you're highly educated and you're not making any money, but you're telling me if I want to make a lot of money that this is what I must do. That's just the wrong way of thinking. You have to be a pioneer. You have to branch out and explore and do the things that not very many people are doing, and be on the edge and on the fringes of society and the workforce and things, because doing what everybody else is doing isn't going to get you ahead at all. I mean, you look at a lot of the most famous people, they're not traditional. They're not doing the traditional thing, and I think that's a big issue. You have, people saying this is what you need to do. So we have more people with degrees in the United States than any other country. And it kind of circles back to most people think Americans are dumb. And, we kind of are. I mean, we go and spend, $500,000 on an education and something that has no track record of being able to produce any type of income. And we we have people that are completely okay with that, and
Right.
will tell other people that it's what they need to do.
And to add and develop that even more on what you're saying from my point of view, it just really disappointed me when I started college. So before I started college, I always, as I said in previous podcasts, particularly the podcast about education, the experience and that I had about education is a means of something you should be excited about, you should treasure, you should see it as a means to enrich yourself. And I had all of those ideas going in when I started college. And it just disappointed me and it frustrated me so severely to a point where I felt like quitting, but I didn't want to quit because I had my own visions, and I knew going into college that, I want these to add on to what my husband is saying. I had these, but it's important to have knowledge of what you want to do or what you want to get out of college, because I knew I wanted to have skills, and I wanted to add on to these skills, but I also wanted to enrich my mind and develop everything. And as I melded my way through college, a lot of times it was this whole thing being pushed, or, oh, well, that's all well and good. And I had to just work my way through that and find space for me where I can learn and develop and my intention of college. But anyhow, this whole push where you only think what we think, and if you don't think any other way, then we'll ostracize you. And unfortunately, that's a lot of the reality of college, and it's just unbelievable. To add on to that, I had a friend when I was starting the U of H, and she said that both her and I, we enjoyed math. So at that time I was taking intro to algebra, and I was thinking about taking statistics and different things with math. So she came from the Middle East, and particularly the Saudi Arabia area, part of the Middle East, I believe, from what she was explaining to me. And so she was talking about how they have government assisted free school, right? And she would say, a lot of people would think that, more so American students would say, oh man, that's awesome, you're lucky to have that, I wish I had that. She's like, no, you wouldn't want that, because you have to understand it's free. So when you get into, she was saying, when you get into the aspect of free school, people are not going to take the time to make it valuable to a person, because it's just seen as something that's government based, that it's here and here you go if you want it, but I'm just going to give you the bare minimum, and that's about it. And then unfortunately, this whole push for free school and this whole push for going to college is the way to go, or that's the way to out. Pushing that narrative. That's what's going to, I think, happen with education, and which I think is happening now with education. It's not valued. People don't see it as a means to develop your mind. What do you...
Well, that's something I never really understood. The same people who are fighting tooth and nail for free government education are the same people who complain about the public education system and say that it's outdated and all the other things they say about it. You don't want the bureaucracy of government in education. You want the freedom of education. If you want to talk about the cost of school, let's talk about the cost of school. Let's talk about how the cost of school has skyrocketed since government started intervening in funding for schools. Let's talk about all the pointless things that money goes to in schools. Here, 3 things you could cut out of every college to get the cost down dramatically. Get rid of every scholarship that's not an academic scholarship. Football, basketball, any type of athletic scholarship, get rid of it. There's no point in it. If you want to play football for this school, guess what? You're going to volunteer your time to play football for this school. You don't get to go to that school for free. So you can play football, and they can invest and divulge tons of money to bring in bigger, better players and get a bigger, better stadium and all this stuff, because they're not giving you more opportunity. You're giving them more opportunity, because your scholarship doesn't come free. Your scholarship is paid for by the students that are going to that school, who are paying to go to that school. The students who couldn't get an athletic scholarship, the students who, make a little too much for any other type of government assistance or any educational assistance, scholarships, things like that, they're paying for that. Those people are paying for that in the tuition of it. So even people who get scholarships from third parties, not through the school, but through a potential employer or through a grant granted to them from a company or a church or something like that, guess what? Part of that money that they earned, they won, is going to pay for John Doe's football career. And you're probably not going to have a career in football after college. Unfortunately, basketball, baseball, whatever. You're probably not going to have that. So get rid of that. There's a giant chunk of educational costs out the window. Now, you get rid of a lot of the other things, the pointless classes and the pointless educational stuff that they force you to do. When you graduate, having to take prerequisite classes that don't necessarily have anything to do with the degree field that you're going into is kind of pointless.
Right.
You get rid of a lot of those things, guess what? There goes a lot of cost. And then start getting rid of teachers who don't have any value or purpose of being there. If you have a class, a teacher who is teaching 1 or 2 students, get rid of them. They're not needed. If students don't have an interest in that class, then you shouldn't be paying that professor to teach that class. If that professor can't teach another class or do something different, then I'm sorry, but there's not enough interest. That's the way it is in any other business, in any other marketplace ever. We cannot subsidize you. We cannot afford to subsidize you. And wait, if things change, if greater interest in this field comes about, we'll give you a call, and you can get cost of education down dramatically by cutting those things out. But they don't, because just like any, people talk about the corporate greed. Well, the educational system is a corporation, and there is a lot of corporate greed in that education. You know, if you have professors and deans and making an entire bachelor's degree's worth of cost in their salary each year, there's your incentive of making sure more and more people go to college. You know, if you have a professor who's making $100,000 a year, there's incentive for at least 6 people to enroll in school where they're paying $60,000 a year now, and you also have to pay for these other students who may not need. You know, you take your ACTs, you take your SATs, you take all these different tests to show that you're smart enough to go to college. Let that be the barrier to entry. You know, you put your government identification number through your driver's license, your ID, your social, whatnot, your passport number if you're coming from another country to come to school here. You put that down on your SAT, and they take your score, and then they reach out via that information. The people reaching out don't get to know your name, your race, your sex, your gender, your religion, anything else about you except for this is what they scored, this is what they're interested in, let's get this person in our school. And you'll have a lot less discrimination based on sex, race, religion, and things like that, because if you don't know it, you can't discriminate off of it. If you're solely going off the test, then that's all that matters. And then people say, well, we got to have better educational systems. Well, if the public education system was so great or sucks so much, why would you want that to be your college? And, you know, it goes into healthcare too. Most people don't understand what socialized healthcare is because most people in the United States never have to deal with it. One of the things about being a veteran is you get to experience socialized healthcare firsthand, because that's what VA healthcare system is socialized healthcare, and they don't care about you. They don't care about their patient. They don't care anything about anything. It is get them in, get them out. If I can write you a prescription for something and shut you up, I'm going to write you a prescription. If you tell me you don't want a prescription, I'm going to tell you, well, you can choose whether or not you want to take it. They don't care about anything except for getting you in, getting you out. They got to give you an hour to sit and talk to them if you're seeing a psychologist or a psychiatrist. You get your hour, and then they get you out. And all it is, well, last time you told me this. Oh, okay. Any changes in that? Oh, okay. Well, why don't you try doing this? Or why don't you try this new medication? Or why don't you come in next week? That's about all the time we have, and you just tell me more about these problems. I'm not going to try to actually help you. I'm just going to listen to you tell me your problems. And then you go to your doctor and you say, hey doc, my shoulders and my back are really killing me. You know, is there something that I can do to try to help? Well, here's some pain pills, you know.
Right.
I would suggest you take 2 or 3 of them whenever you're experiencing pain, you know, but there's not much we can do for you outside of that. You know, we can try to get you in an MRI in 2 years, you know, but when it's available, it's pointless. They don't care about you. They're just trying to run you through. But people say they want that, when I would much rather go through to my doctor that I have to pay a $50 copay to go see with my insurance. But, you know, I don't understand, you know, to bring it back to education, I don't understand why somebody would want to pay for something that has such a weak return rate. 90% of, I would go greater, I would say 99% of people who pay $500,000 for a slip of paper that says they're educated are not making the numbers to justify that slip of paper. When I out-earn most degree holders, I say there is a problem because I don't have any type of degree. My degree is experience. I beat out people when when I was trying to get into the police academy, I beat out applicants that had degrees. I beat out applicants that had degrees because I had knowledge and experience. I had military experience. I had life experience. I had earned life experience, not because I put myself on an enclosed campus, a social bubble. I went out and I lived life. I had jobs. I experienced life. I did things. And then I went with those and I did my interviews. And every time the idea of education came up, I asked a question. Would going and enclosing myself in an ecosystem for 4 years make me a better police officer? How many people will I be dealing with on a daily basis that have a degree? Does me producing a degree to them make them respect me more? The answer to all of those things is no. You know, the only people who care about people with degrees are other people with degrees. You know, but when their toilet breaks, they're calling a plumber. They're calling when a tornado blows through and rips off all the shingles to their house, they're calling a roofer. Guess what? Well, those people don't have degrees. They may have some certifications, but they learned what they learned from their father. They learned what they learned from a mentor. And we need to try to get back to that. I won't lie and say that all degrees are pointless and all education is pointless, because there are things we need education for. But, you know, we were talking about in second world countries where you did what your parents did. Well, that only works if you're an only child. If you're like me, the youngest of 7, you can't sit back and hope that there's something for you to do at the house if, you know, that's what you're doing. You have to reach out. You have to go and try to make your own way. So when it comes down to it, you have to say, okay, what can I do to make sure that I can have success in life? What can I do to be successful? Okay, I know a guy who knows how to lay brick. I'm going to go study under him. I know a guy who knows how to rebuild these engines. I'm going to see if I can get him to teach me the things he knows so that I can start doing the same thing. So that I can start doing this thing that people need. One thing that I always hated hearing in school, while I was in the military, things like that, I hated hearing, well, if you don't learn this algebra, you won't be able to do this job. The most you can hope for is to be a ditch digger or a garbage man. It's like, well, ditch diggers and garbage men get paid more than you.
Yeah, and also to add on to that, the American politics, as far as that goes, you can, what do you think about, pandering to that whole socialism, that whole aspect of that?
I think you should be a dictatorship in your family. You know, the family should be a dictatorship. One person delegating things that need to be done. Having advisors, you know, their spouse is their main advisor. In your extended family, you should be communist. Everyone looking out for everyone else. In your neighborhood, you should be socialist. Hey, we're all going to help each other and do things to help each other out. And I've got this, so I'm going to give it to you to help you so that you can help John, so John can help Sarah, so Sarah can help Susie, so Susie can help me. In your town, you should be, you know, democratic. And as things get bigger, you should branch away from socialism and communism and things like that. They don't work in large groups. They don't work in large organizations, top-down management does not work for a company like Coca-Cola or a company like Apple. You may have a CEO, but that CEO who is not making every single decision. That CEO is making major decisions on behalf of the company, but he can be replaced and voted out and things like that. But you get down to it, it is the district managers, it is the store managers, it is the floor managers, it is a bunch of other people doing things without permission from the CEO to get things done and to make the company profitable. Just like my industry, there are a lot of managers. Some would say too much. I would be one of those people. But you can make a decision yourself. You don't have to have somebody tell you what you have to do. And but just in that instance, you have to be responsible for that decision. A lot of people say, well, if it wasn't for government, how would we make sure that children without families are taken care of? Or if there is a father beating his child, how do you take care of that? And to that I say, if I were to find out that one of my children's friends was getting beaten by their parents, if I am going to do something about it, I need to be willing to take responsibility for that child. If I am not willing to take responsibility for that child, I should not step in. The idea that government steps in and does something is because government is willing to take responsibility for that child. And it is like that in all things. If I say that this business is doing things that are harmful to the community, and I step in and with a group of other people and run off this business that is supporting the community without a means of giving that same level of support to the community, I should bear the burden along with the people who were there with me running off that business and making sure the community is stable. If you commit a crippling act against your neighbor, your community, or anyone, you should bear the burden for that, period. And we have a lot of people today who are going out and in the name of protest causing massive havoc, mayhem, but then bearing none of the responsibility for the aftermath. And that's just sad. I mean,
very much so. Very much so.
We need personal accountability.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this is my husband Garrett point of view, and it was so enriching to have you on here. I greatly appreciate it. So I just can't thank you enough. Thank you for all your perspective, your rich perspectives. I hope your listeners have gained a lot of perspective about it, and I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much. Now we're reaching the end of the Harboring Light. I hope you really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
And I want to thank you for allowing me to be here, asking me to come and do this. It means a lot to me because I really believe that this will do great and you will be highly successful.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Anyone who is interested in things that I've said, you cannot find me on Facebook, Minds, Instagram, Twitter, or any of those things. You cannot find me on Audible or any other platform. I do not have a presence on social media, and I do not have a presence on anything, but you can find my lovely wife on Minds. You can find her on Twitter. You can listen to her podcast anywhere you find your podcast, and she's trying to expand every single day, and I greatly appreciate any and all of you who listen to her, because I want her to be very successful in this. I believe she has a voice that should be heard by all, and I hope you all have great years ahead of you. I hope you all have great lives, and I hope that all of you take on your own demons and take on your own personal accountability and help bring not only America but your nation to a point in which you can be proud to say, this is who I am, this is who our nation is, this is a place that any person can come to and be proud to live. Because if you are proud in yourself and you exude that pride and you push to help those around you and bring them into your fold, you will be successful, and you will build a place that you can be proud of.
Thank you so much. That's so wonderful. You see, that's why it's important to know what you want, know who you want, because if you exude those things in yourself, you get it back. And that's why I'm very thankful, very fortunate that he is my husband. So, again, reach the end of this podcast. That was the Harboring Light. Thank you so much.